I can see you. You know that, right?
Yes. I hope so.
Woo! Welcome to Knock Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of TNT, the Twisted New Testament Revealed, with Rabbi, the Goofy Man, Stuart Federow, the Federale from Houston, Texas. Rabbi, shalom, shalom. It's good to have you back. Keep dancing. Go ahead. Let's keep it playing for a minute. Hey, I don't know the words, but I know it's a God song, and it's got life to it, so I'm cool. But you know what we'll do is at the end of the show, like usual, we'll play off one of our dear friend Joe Buchanan's music from joebuchanan.com.
Yes.
Hey, that's good.
JoeBuchananMusic.com.
Joe Buchanan Music.
Yes.
By the way, Joe, listen to me very carefully. If you want me to keep playing this music, you need to get a hold of your people who take care of this printing thing, because I keep getting all these flags on YouTube saying you just use copyright material, and it takes me like a week.
No. We have explicit permission to do so.
Yes, I know, but YouTube keeps flagging my videos, and I have to go in and fill out this report. And if I have to keep doing this, honestly, I probably just start picking different music because it's really kind of a pain. So otherwise,
I'm glad you told me. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Thank you, Joe. I love the music. Keep up the good work, and I will keep using it. We just got to get past this YouTube glitch. Well, okay, very good, man. Well, Rabbi, how was your last few weeks? How are you doing, sir?
Slow and steady wins the race.
That is just fine.
Yes. Had,
yes.
You know, what's it called? Rehab therapy today. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yep.
Very good.
See?
Yep. Oh, yeah, you got the proof right there.
Yep. That's right.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a rush for me. I didn't realize it until I rushed over here to the studio from flying home from Austin to get back here. I pulled in the house. Golly. I thought we were starting at 8, and that's what time we usually do start.
No, you had said 8:30.
Yeah, I know, but it was one of those things where usually we start at 8, but this post that I put up, as it turned out, I accidentally put 8:30, and I didn't realize that, which is good. I'm glad I did, because the people were expecting 8:30, but usually it's 8 o'clock. I needed that extra 40 minutes, because setting up for a new broadcast, the Hebrew one, I accidentally saved a lot of settings instead of saving as, which completely changed so many things. So I had to go back in and refix everything. We're good to go, though. Oh, man. Wow. Okay, Rabbi. Super duper. Okay, so what little holiday things are we coming up on?
Well, let's see. Tisha B'Av is probably the first one.
Okay.
Trying to think. This is going to be an interesting evening because with my therapy, my brain is not functioning as well.
You know what? If you'll wait, give me 3 minutes. I'll go get a glass of wine, and then I can kind of tone
then you'll
down.
be really happy.
Okay, so phone number, where's it at? There it is right there. Phone number's up on your screen. Please do call in. No, it's not up on your screen like it's supposed to be. I don't know why. Well, isn't that precious? I wonder if I have a backup. 855-952-4253. See, I had to go back in and change everything, and I lost some of my setup keys. That's okay. 855-952-4253. The lines are open, so if you would like to call in, feel free to do so.
Actually, I probably should say, because you said holiday.
A holy day, really, is what I was meaning.
Okay, but fast day comes first, which is, it usually, start over. Normally it would be Saturday, but it's a Sunday because you can't fast on, you can't be in mourning on a Shabbat. So, week and a half, 2 weeks. Like the 24th is the observed fast day for the 17th of Tammuz.
Lovely. Tell me, Rabbi, off topic. Okay, because my brain was just going way off in left field. It was like somebody came and took a bat and went while you were talking.
You know something? So, that's exactly how I feel.
We have this whole idea of the Hebrew scriptures supposedly was written, all of the Hebrew scripture, the Tanakh, was supposedly, which is not true, I'm just throwing this out there, is what they say. The entire Hebrew scriptures were mysteriously translated by the 70 scribes. All of them identical, including Psalms, including the Dead Sea Scroll, all this stuff here.
Not true.
Right. So the idea of people arguing is it Psalm 22 where it's talking about as a lion, is that his hands and his feet? Is that the one?
Plus a lot of other ones come from 22.
Okay,
yes.
so what kind of historical background do you have and do you know about on the original?
Well, Septuagint, from the word 70 meaning 72, there were 72 scholars, Jewish scholars, who were asked by Ptolemy to translate the Torah, only the 5 books of Moses, into Greek because he wanted a Greek translation of it for his library.
Okay.
And the story...
I have no idea what just happened.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Music soothes the savage beast.
Not that kind. It just woke me up.
According to the story, each individual person was put in his own room, and when they came out, each from his own office, for lack of a better term, and they examined the 72 translations. They were exactly duplicates, one to the other, word for word for word for word, were the exact same between the 70 Hebrew scholars who were asked to do this for Ptolemy.
Right.
But that was in the Greek period, so we're talking,
and we're talking about, they're saying the entire Hebrew script.
No. It's only the Torah. If you look at it, first of all, the Talmudic passage says only the Torah. If you look at any reputable source, when it goes to define the word Septuagint, it'll explain that the word Septuagint really only refers to the Greek translation of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, by the 70 scholars. What happened is that after that, unknown people, we have no idea who they were, each person with his own varying ability, usually poor, translated the Nach, the prophets and the writings. Much later.
Right.
Well, doesn't even have to be much later. It wasn't the 70.
Right, that's a good point. Right.
Okay, so whenever it happened, whoever did it, and there were tons of different versions of Greek translations by varying authors of varying degrees of ability. And at one point, all these other Greek translations of the prophets and writings were bunched together with the real Septuagint of the Torah, and then they were unfortunately given the same name. This is the Septuagint. So people who don't know any better take a look at anything that's the Greek translation and think, well, that's the Septuagint translated by the 70.
Right.
And it's not.
And furthermore...
And that's why you have so many problems with the prophets and the writings in Greek, and why you have other problems, additional problems, when you see the Greek translations used in the Christian's New Testament, which probably was also originally Greek too. You've got these translations of translations of translations. Yeah, I think I did that right. That will put you into a Aramaic or a Hebrew version of the New Testament, but they're not the original. They're not even remotely supposed to be the original.
Right.
And
interestingly enough, too, to me, it doesn't surprise me that you put 70 scribes in. You could put them in different countries, and if we're just talking about the Torah, of course they're going to be identical. I mean, every single Torah scroll.
Why would they?
Why would I think that they would be identical in the Torah? I mean, and this is where you're going to say, William, you're wrong, and I'm okay with that.
Here's the thing. Okay, there's a miraculous thing going on by making each one. William, what's the difference between saying somebody called me and saying someone called me?
I have no idea.
There's no difference, but they're not the same word.
Right.
So if I translate it as someone and you translate it as somebody, they're not the same translation.
But here's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
I have a Torah scroll. It's not kosher because it's old, but it's kosher in the sense that it's...
Wait. Age has nothing to do with a kosher Torah scroll.
No. What I'm saying, when I say old, I mean there's letters flaking off and things. And
okay, fine. Now we're talking.
Okay. But it is a parchment Torah scroll. It's a large one, whatever. Whenever we bought this Torah scroll, this is about 4 years ago, it was I was at work one day and I was listening to Rabbi Yehoshua Gordon of blessed memory from Chabad.org, and he was talking about the larger letters and the smaller letters that are encrypted into the Torah. And he said, now you want to pay special attention. Right here is in Chayei Sarah. There was a letter where there was a small letter bet inside the reduced letter, which really had, and anyway, the meaning behind it's not important. What's important is that there's these smaller letters and larger letters in the Torah scroll. And he said, now if you just recently bought a Torah scroll, he said you want to pay special attention to this one little spot, because if this word doesn't have a small letter bet in it, he goes, you didn't get a kosher Torah scroll. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, oh man, I could not wait to get home. I was like horrified because I just had this thing. Got home and I opened the Torah scroll and I found it. I was like, oh yes, finally, yes, it's actually right. But my point being this: every Torah scroll on the planet, they're identical in every single way.
Exact duplicate.
Identical.
Yep.
Unlike the King James Bible, right? Or the whatever.
Wait, say it again?
I said, unlike the Bible, the Christian Bible, we got 5 million translations and stuff.
Right, but
the Hebrew Scriptures have been perfectly, flawlessly presered. So my point is,
there's a reason for that.
Okay, go for it.
It's because the rabbi set rules for being a scribe.
Okay.
Especially when copying a Torah scroll. And by making it a religious ritual, you are ensuring that it's going to be done exactly the same way every single time without fail. And so it is a function of the Jewish religion that ensured that each Torah scroll would be an exact duplicate of each other.
So why would it be such a supernatural miracle that these scribes were rabbinical scribes?
Because they're translating.
But
they could just as easily translate someone as somebody.
But is it not true that in yeshiva, even ever since the school of Shem, from then on they have taught and literally, like nowadays, I mean, they literally teach their kids to memorize the Torah scroll. I mean, so it's easy to translate something if you already know what it says.
No. As soon as you are translating something, it's different than having memorized it. For the reason I said, it is a miraculous thing that it was in fact the same exact duplicate text when they translated it, because translating is not the same thing as memorization of the original text.
And by the way, I'm not knocking it all. I totally believe that the Torah of Moshe, and I believe it's a wonderful miracle.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about a translation of it.
Right. True.
And one rabbi could have just as easily said someone instead of somebody, and another rabbi said somebody instead of someone.
That was a great example, but they didn't. They specifically use identical words. That's a very great point.
Exact duplicate according to the Talmudic passage.
Nice. Very good.
Something was going on there, but not for the Nach, not for the prophets and the writings.
Okay, moving forward. I saw today, actually I see it a lot, but I just paid attention to it today for some reason, more so than others, probably because we're having our show tonight. There's a church on 620 driving for all you Austinites, from 71 past the dam over past Steiner Ranch area. There's a church called Acts, ACTS Church, and I was just thinking, I was like, you know what? If they really knew what that meant, they would change the name of that, because. Maybe. I mean, because Paul was part of the author of Acts. I mean, I know, how many authors of Acts were there? Was it just Paul? Was it Peter? What was the deal? Who authored the book of Acts, or the letter? Was it just
I'm
just
sure
John?
Scholars will argue about it, but how could anybody know?
I'm sorry, not John. Luke. Pardon me.
Acts is supposed to be Luke, the physician, Luke the non-Jew.
Oh, okay, got it.
But how would they even know?
Okay, well, here's my point. I actually made a mistake in my thought driving down the road today, because in my mind I was thinking Acts, that was Paul. Paul never even heard of a virgin birth, so of course, if I had seen a church that was actually called the Church of Paul, they would definitely have to change that name. Otherwise, they'd have to, get rid of the idea that they believe in a virgin birth.
I see what you mean.
I didn't have enough coffee. I didn't have any coffee today, so that's my problem. I have to have fuel.
Well, you'll sleep better tonight.
Maybe if I don't have another cup. If I don't have a cup of coffee when I get home.
Now, if you do that, then you'll be up all night.
Right. Okay, the blood. Okay, I'm going to say something now. The problem is I don't know how I can make sure everybody knows when I say this word. I'm not being a jerk. When I say Yashke, I'm not trying to make up a silly name for Jesus, and I'll put that out there now. If I ever refer to him as Yashke or just the J-Man, not JC, because that would represent Jesus the Christ, which I do not believe he is, so right. I won't say that. So if I ever say Yashke, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just... Personally, I believe that when in this modern society, whenever somebody uses the name of Jesus, they are mentioning the name of another God because the church has deified Jesus. And we are supposed to be circumspect and do not mention the names of other gods.
By the way, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why are you hesitant to be disrespectful?
Why are you hesitant to not be disrespectful? Never mind. I know that answer. I know what you go through on a daily basis. You shared with me. It would drive me nuts too. I mean, I would literally probably walk around with a shotgun. Okay, please, no hateful emails. I get it. The reason why, honestly,
I have no problem with being disrespectful.
Yeah, I do. I know, and that's why we have such a great show in this, because we have a different contrast between you and I. You know, there's tools for different things. I've got a big axe that I use to chop down trees, but I use my miter saw to cut shoe molding. Two totally different tools. They're both absolutely necessary, and I'm grateful for you because I love you, Rabbi. Thank you.
I love you too.
Much. I love you, baby. Okay, so anyway, this whole I was going to drift on to the blood thing, and somehow we got distracted. But the blood of Yashke.
The blood.
The idea that really crashes my brain is, and I hear it so much. So if I repeat it a lot on the show, every 2 or 3 weeks, sorry, it's just I deal with it a lot. People saying, well, that the Old Testament God of vengeance and anger and wrath, right? And then the New Testament God of mercy, whatever, referring to Jesus. And I'm thinking, you know what? If you really would just simply take the time and just close your New Testament, set it aside, study the Hebrew Scriptures, you'll see all the areas where God has forgiven people over and over again, even without sacrifice for one thing. But in the New Testament, it's like you screw up once and you're doomed to death. Not only to death, but there's got to be bloodshed. And
the wages of sin are death. So any one sin gets you the death penalty.
And so tell me how it is that the New Testament is the God of mercy and the Old Testament is the God of vengeance and anger and wrath.
And the whole concept of if you don't believe the right thing, then you go to hell.
Right.
Is not to me a God of mercy, compassion, mercy.
Right. Agreed.
Any word you can think of.
Agreed. Here's a quick thought too. With the whole Jesus sacrifice thing, in the Torah, when an animal is sacrificed, it has to be flawless. It can't have any blemishes or nothing on it. So, and that's at the time of death. I mean, literally, when that throat is cut, or however that works, the nip,
when it's offered as a sacrifice,
the
it's supposed to be
moment
without
that thing loses its breath, it cannot have any blemishes on it, period. So with Jesus, he was beaten, he was scourged, the whole 9 yards. He was almost beaten beyond recognition.
Yeah, the crown of thorns. In every picture the Christians come up with where the crown of thorns are on Jesus' head, there's little blood things coming out.
Right. And this was before he died. This was not like this didn't.
Yes,
they didn't.
Before he was made the act of sacrifice. Exactly.
Right. Very good. And I think it was you or somebody said something, and I find it humorous now because I'm so far out. I mean, when you leave, when you're trapped in a jungle for so many years and you just barely get out, you're still kind of nervous. And the further you get away, and it's like you're still kind of like, oh, it's kind of like looking back over your shoulder, back and forth. But when you really get really far away, and then you realize that little jungle you was in really wasn't that big, you could have exited any place, you start to feel more comfortable and you start to be more lighthearted about where you were. So for me, if I chuckle a little bit when it comes to Christian theology, it's not out of disrespect, it's just out of the fact that I cannot believe that I didn't see this sooner. It was that easy to spot, but I never did. So you'll
forgive me because when I chuckle, it is out of disrespect.
Okay. Which is why we contrast. Okay, that's good. Hey,
yes.
Right on. Okay, so I forgot where I was going.
You were going to tell me about something with blood. Blood.
Blood. That's where we started off at.
I want to bite your neck.
I want to suck your blood. Okay, so
that was good, William. That was good.
Man, Sean Connery is my favorite here.
That was very good.
Okay. I can do John Wayne too. Watch. How are you doing? Actually, it's the same as John. I used to make funny jokes. And here's my Reba McEntire. How are you doing? Okay, there you go. So
I didn't even hear that one.
Back on the topic.
Forget that.
Back on topic. So
yes.
I think I know what it was now. The sacrifices. If we just look at the basic ideal of the sacrificial system, there's literally holes all through it. But the biggest thing that really kind of made me chuckle was the fact that a sacrifice, if it doesn't stay dead, it's not a sacrifice. I'm sorry.
You know
the
way I word it is that if it's not a loss.
Yes. Yeah. If it's going to come back, then there is no sacrifice.
Okay. There's no sacrifice. A sacrifice means something is taken away. Something that was there is no longer there.
Sorry. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I hear this. I even hear this from ministers, much less anybody else in the Christian community. But they talk about how, in this overwrought, overly emotional, very passionate way, they'll talk about how Jesus was God who put on a coat of flesh.
Right.
So that means that when he was crucified, all he did was take his jacket off. And that's what they're making it look like. Yeah. So there's no real loss, because how can God die? And the other side of that same coin is that if it wasn't Jesus the God who died on the cross, then it was Jesus the human, and all they have in their New Testament as the basis of their religion is a human sacrifice.
Okay, and let me ask you a question just to verify, and I know the answer, I'm pretty sure, but I just want to make sure. Is there any, I know Hebrews 10:26, if there's any Christians watching, if you'll turn your Bible to Hebrews 10:26, you'll see that in the New Testament, Paul is actually saying that not every sin is actually forgiven. But I was taught in every single church I've ever been to that no matter what you do, doesn't matter what sin you commit, you will always be forgiven no matter what. That's what they always told me.
Which?
10:26. I haven't looked it up in like 3 years, so actually if that's wrong, then...
10:26. For if we sin willfully, after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remains no more sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries.
There you go. So the idea of in the New Testament, if you're a Christian, I mean, you're going to have to pick someone. That's really that was troubling me towards the end of my Christian walk, and my New Testament walk was. And if you really study even your own Christian scriptures, you're going to find so much division and so much separation. Like for the fact that we mentioned earlier, Paul, he never knew about the crucifixion. The virgin birth. There's so many different variations from different people group. Even in James, I think it's the brother of Jesus, was all about keeping, teaching people to keep, obey this.
Keep the mitzvot.
Yeah, right. But all the others, and even Paul was like, you do this, then you've fallen from grace, whatever. So if you're going to remain a New Testament believer, you're going to have to really take your New Testament and you're going to have to separate it into sections. And then once you do that, based on theology, and once you do that, you're going to have to pick one or the other. Because there's a lot of different variations in there, and you can't believe them all because they contradict each other. So that's just my thoughts.
See, it's that last part that really makes me understand why Christians, William, I just had a very lengthy back and forth through email with a Christian minister in Louisiana. I think he's in Louisiana. I'm not even sure where he is. The long and short of it is that there was a caller on my radio show who basically wanted us to have, usually with minister, priests, and rabbis, someone will call in and say, you really ought to have a Muslim on sometimes.
Right.
And this caller was, no, you really need to have a Messianic Jew on sometimes.
I'd like to hear that.
And I said, no, that's not going to happen.
Right. I would like to hear that. I actually would, mainly because that
You'd like to do what?
I would like to hear that, because that's some of the better arguments I've heard come from Messianic Jews. Granted, they all crash and burn, but they're still better than some of the ones that I hear in Christianity. So, just for
every so often on our show, okay, you'll say, yeah, but that's not how the Messianics look at it, and I'm very surprised, because even if you're talking about in spite of the fact that you're talking about interpretations of various scriptures or how they approach certain things in scriptures, their theology is still right down the line, no different than a Baptist down the block.
Yeah, I mean, the basis of Messianic...
I assume always because of that their interpretations are going to be the same, or how they look at something is going to be the same as the Baptist down the block, and it's not always true.
Well, let me explain it this way. When I first left Messianic Judaism, which I was in it, teaching it for about 3 years, teaching and studying it very, very thoroughly. Again, just for the viewers who don't know, my dad, my biological father, is a Messianic self-appointed rabbi in Austin. Has been 26 years now. So he pulled me in and taught me what he knew. I learned what I learned based on the New Testament teachings and such. And whenever I heard Rabbi Singer say for the first time that Messianics are nothing more than Christians with another name, I was thinking, my first thought, this is after I left the Messianic faith, and I was like fully going straight to Tanakh and Tanakh only at this point. And I was like, that's not true at all. I said, because first of all, Christians do their Sunday Mass, Sunday worship, right? Christians do Christmas, Easter. They eat unclean. They don't have any holy rituals whatsoever. Whereas Messianics, now, they're totally different. They're completely different, and they are. I could still say it justifiably here, but the problem is what makes Messianics the same, which makes them actually Christian, is not the fact that they wear tzitzit or a yarmulke or that they keep Sabbath on the Saturday. What makes them Christian is the fact that they believe in a New Testament Messiah figure. That's why they're no
Divine,
different.
saving man God.
Yeah, right. And so, in that regards, they are Christian completely, but they are different. But then again, so are Baptists. Are so completely different than non-denominational. About the same difference in those. About the same difference you have in Messianics versus other Christians. I mean, you have Orthodox Christians who tend to keep Sabbath on Saturday, and they won't eat pork. So realistically, they're all just different variations. And I get that.
Well
now.
Put, by the way. That's very well put.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so once again, ladies, sorry my lower thirds are malfunctioning thanks to my careless rush of switching shows yesterday, so I do apologize.
Well, at any rate, one of the things that this Messianic guy was, saying in his email to me, which gets me no end. Mm-hmm. Let's take the whole Christian-Jewish dialogue out of this. If a Muslim was coming to you to try to make you a Muslim, would it impress you that he's quoting passages from the Quran in order to convert you?
Not at all.
That's my point.
Not at all. That's a good point.
That's exactly, because you have to already accept, in that case, the Quran as authoritative before you will start following it,
sure,
or accepting it, or believing it, or whatever the word is. So, this Messianic guy was trying to convince me of his truth by quoting from the New Testament. And first I had to explain to him what I just said to you. How would it impress you that a Muslim was coming to you to convert you to Islam if he quoted from the Quran? Mm-hmm. Of course not, because you don't hold the Quran as authoritative.
Right.
And I said, I don't hold the New Testament as authoritative. And then I said, which I'm picking up on the last thing you had said before, and that is, how can you trust anything the New Testament says? It's so contradictory from one to the other. From one thing to the next, from one gospel to the other gospel, from something in the Gospels to something in the book of Acts. It's just, it's so self-contradictory. How can you trust anything it said?
Yeah, very true. Okay, going back to Hebrews 10:26, there's no sacrifice for sin.
We're talking about that, weren't we?
Right, yeah. What I want to discuss real quickly is there even a sacrifice for rebellious sins according to the Hebrew Scriptures, like something you did on purpose?
If you And the answer to that is no, because blood sacrifices were only for unintentional sins.
Right, which means that Jesus not only had it beneficial, which it was not, would have actually only applied to sins that you did on accident, not willful,
right?
Things that you plotted out or planned.
Right. And I hate to say this because William, they're in great need of an awful lot of, for lack of a better term, ministry, and that is people in prison.
Yeah, true.
I'm thinking of prisoners who will, in prison, throw their faith into Jesus.
Yeah.
And if what they're already found done it on purpose, so Jesus as a sacrifice, even if it was acceptable, which it would not be on numerous levels, isn't going to help them anyway.
Right. True. And I have to go back to this because it's so powerful. And I'll mention it again. I'll mention it from time to time. The video I saw on YouTube where these kids played a trick on their mom. They were not wealthy at all. In fact, they were kind of like behind their bills and stressed out with money and stuff. And they had this fake lottery ticket they gave her for her birthday.
That's sick.
And it was sick, but it happened. And you know what? She was in the video that I had seen. She was kind of just being grumpy, and the dad was sitting there or whatever on the couch, and the kids were like there for the birthday. And she's like, "What? What do you want?" This is a gift card. She opens up the card, sees this lottery ticket, and they're like, "Come on, Mom, scratch it off." So she scratches it off. That woman's life was changed because of her belief in what she saw in that paper. Okay, she literally, her entire character changed. She became just instantly overjoyed and was loving and said, "Oh my God!" It was only $10,000, but when you're poor, that's a lot so
It's a lot of money anyway.
And so yeah, right, no kidding. So she's like turns into this loving, and so they didn't tell her about it. I'm not sure. It was just a small period of time, but they didn't tell her about it. But the entire time that she believed it was real, her life was completely changed. And so these prisoners who give their life to Jesus, they give their life because they get this message from these chaplains and stuff that, Jesus will forgive you of everything, so you can take that burden off of you, so you don't have to feel bad about it anymore. Right. They would pay money to get rid of that burden. So it's an emotional change. It's an emotional lottery ticket that at the end of the day, it's a fake lottery ticket. But just because it's fake.
Until they find out it's fake, which many never do.
Right. But even if it is fake, it can still change your life. And so
Absolutely.
To those people who are out there questioning their faith in the New Testament, I'm telling you, just because your life was changed, it wasn't changed because of Yashke or the J-Man. It was changed because of how you believed in him. Your belief in him is what changed you.
Did it. Right.
He did nothing. It was what you believed in.
My response, which you've heard me say repeatedly, is that our God is not so petty and small that he requires someone to pray in the right name or have the right faith in order to answer their prayers.
Very true. Very true. Unbelievable. So I would like to go a little further into the sacrifices, just a little bit. Again, we've touched base on them, but we usually just spot around all the time. So
which is why it's fun. I think why I enjoy it.
Me too. We don't have to get on a train and ride it till it crashes.
Yeah.
So bad analogy.
Yes, but unfortunately, the train can only stay on its tracks.
Yes, absolutely.
So we can get off track.
Right. Okay, so you have the sacrificial
system.
system.
Show you play a track.
Exactly. Okay, so in the sacrificial system, you have the lambs and the goats and the female goats and the male goats and all this other stuff.
Right.
And just to go with,
you have incense.
That's what I was going to
say. What's it called? An ephah of wheat.
Right, or barley.
Fine flour.
Yep. And so all of these for sin. So to suggest or to say that the only sacrifice or the only atonement for sin is actually through bloodshed is incorrect. It's based on a mistranslation from the Hebrew Scriptures. Okay, but if let's just say, for example, that the Yom Kippur sacrifice, the Day of Atonement, when it comes to sin, and actually not even use it, just in general, across Tanakh, across the Hebrew Scriptures from Genesis to Malachi, mainly in the Torah, obviously, where does it tell you, or what does it say regarding if you're using a lamb as a sin offering for your sin, what gender must it be?
Female.
Female.
Right.
Female.
And last I looked, Jesus was neither a lamb nor was he female.
Right. Nor did he have a male father figure. Okay, so again, moving across the board rather quickly, as we have already, we can see so far. I mean, there's holes in every single aspect. I mean, not just a few angles are bad. Every single angle about Jesus being a sacrifice.
Now you're talking about basically the birth stories.
Yep.
And Matthew doesn't agree with Luke. And Mark and John don't even have a birth story of Jesus.
Talk about that for a minute. I would like to hear more on that.
Okay. You have to understand that when the New Testament gets put together, gets invented, gets written down, Mark, even though it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Mark, by all Christian scholars, is considered the first gospel to have been written down. So people come along and they say to the Christian community, most likely Jews, come along to the Christian community and say, wait a minute, I thought that your Messiah had to be a direct bloodline descendant from King David going through Solomon. And so Matthew hears the complaints, and when he invents his stories about Jesus in the New Testament, he has to invent a story to answer the question, what was the genealogy of Jesus? How can Jesus be considered the Messiah if he wasn't a direct bloodline descendant from King David through King Solomon? And so he creates, his version. Then people come along to Matthew and they say, well, Matthew, they'll ask questions, and so Luke will hear the questions, and then Luke will start inventing his stories to answer the questions or the problems and the issues raised with Mark and Luke. Well, I'm sorry, with Matthew and Mark. Okay, so you have to understand from the very beginning that the New Testament isn't writing down histories. They are writing responses to history.
Okay.
So this is called a gospel dynamic. That's the name given to it by a Rabbi Michael Cook in a book called, give me a second.
The name sounds familiar. Michael Cook.
Yeah, I'm sure I've talked about it before. But
yeah.
Where's my book?
While you're booking it, I'm going to look it.
Well, at any rate, that's not it either. I have it somewhere. But at any rate, the point is that it's called...
See, as the historian, display person.
More of a theologian. But at any rate, the point is that I'll find it when we're in a few minutes. But at any rate, the dynamic of the way in which the Gospels were written is that the authors were responding to questions and problems and issues that came up previous to their writing down their version of the story of Jesus. Okay. A dove lands on Jesus's head or shoulder or whatever. There's a voice from heaven that says, "You are my begotten Son, with you I am well pleased." Okay, which gave rise to the early church heresy called adoptionism, that Jesus was not born of God, but rather he was adopted by God as his son, because there's no evidence from the Gospel of Mark that Jesus' birth was anything miraculous or anything special. And so the church earliest church had to fight this idea of adoptionism, which was a heresy against the early church. So Matthew comes along and says, look, I got to invent some sort of miracle birth story about Jesus, and I have to provide in my gospel a genealogy to prove, so anybody who questions from now on will have this gospel to show that Jesus was in fact a descendant of King David through King Solomon without, the usual stuff. Okay. All right. Luke comes along, may or may not know for this section about Matthew's gospel, and so he's trying to answer the same question about Mark that there's no story about Jesus' birth. There's no genealogy to show that it goes back to King David through King Solomon, etc., etc. And so he invents his story about the birth story of Jesus and the gospel. And the genealogy of Jesus.
And there's a lot of copying going on in certain areas, right?
There's some copying going on, but there are certain areas that are contradictory that's going on between Matthew and Mark and Luke and John. That's why Matthew has a genealogy for Jesus that contradicts the Luke genealogy for Jesus, and that's why Christianity then has to have the answer. Well, they don't agree. Well, Christianity, to respond to this new problem, will then say, oh, well, Luke is the genealogy of Mary, and Matthew is the genealogy of Joseph. Okay.
Interesting.
Well, the problem, of course, of that is that both Matthew and Luke explicitly say that it's the genealogy of Joseph, each one making a statement that this is the genealogy of Joseph, basically, even though Joseph was not the biological father of Jesus. Okay.
And then you have the idea of Paul, who actually says, "Don't get caught up in his endless genealogies." And it's because he also knows that there's no way to prove Jesus' lineage. This this vision of a person, whatever.
Or there's an overlap in time.
Okay.
With Matthew or Luke, possibly.
Okay.
With Paul.
Why would Paul say that to begin? I mean,
that's my point.
Right.
Paul might have known about the genealogical differences, the differences in genealogy between Matthew and Luke, and therefore he's telling his followers, the future Christians, don't pay attention to all this stuff about genealogy.
Oh, that's right, because Acts, the story with Paul towards the end, that's actually heading towards the end of his ministry, not the beginning, right?
It's the end of whose ministry?
Paul.
You jumped there.
Paul's.
Okay, yes.
Okay, now if that's true, then yes, I could see how that would be. I could see how they could say, well, they could, at the time, that stage of Paul's life, after all these other letters have been written, Thessalonians, Corinthians, all this other stuff, and now he's getting older and he's here, and then he's hearing people say, hey, how come Luke and Matthew
just have you
know what?
Goes,
don't even worry about that
stuff. Acknowledging the problems that exist between the Matthew and Luke versions of the genealogies of Jesus.
Now, I go back to my question. Why would Paul say that? And let me shape it for you. Would any Jew, would any prophet ever agree that you don't worry about endless genealogies when it comes to a Messiah? Would a prophet agree to that statement? Meaning that...
Probably not.
Right.
But let me tell you something.
Okay.
Let's say, God willing, soon and in our day, that the Messiah comes. Okay. If he starts making the world truly a world of peace, nation not lifting up sword against nation, learning war no more, absence of famine, universal recognition that God, our God, Jewish God, is God, the whole laundry list of the things that the real Messiah will do when the real Messiah comes, when the real Messiah comes the first time, I'm going to be very happy that I may not ask him, prove to me your genealogy.
The prophets say that there will be no question. Everyone will know.
We're going to know the Messiah by what
no
he
matter
actually
what.
does.
Right. And Jesus did not do that, just to clarify.
What's the word? Come up before the Sanhedrin or come up before the rabbinical courts and say, okay, here, let me lay out my genealogy.
Yeah. It will have to be done because according to...
Let me remind you of something, In the... Okay, let's even back up a further step. Let's go back to Jacob and his 12 sons. Okay. Ignoring population differences and sizes of population differences, somebody claiming to be the Messiah already has a 1/12 chance of being right. You see what I'm saying? If you eliminate, which you can't, and there's a whole historical reason why you can't. But let's pretend we're going to go with the epithet of the 10 lost tribes. Okay, so now you're down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, depending on how you want to count them. The point is that you got a higher likelihood if a guy says, "Well, I'm not a Kohen, a priest, and I'm not from the tribe of Levi." They got a pretty good chance of being, Judah, the right.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there are plenty of other reasons to know that the 10 lost tribes were, if really push comes to shove, it's Second Chronicles, and I'll have to look it up, where they're talking about all of the tribes being in Judah.
Mm-hmm.
And this is well after the destruction of the northern kingdom. So we know that the 10 lost tribes were never really lost, and there was even a remnant of them in Judah at the Babylonian exile, and so you always had the various tribes in existence.
Okay, right.
Okay, so that's be that as it may.
Okay.
But somebody starts doing the real things that the real Messiah is supposed to do, I'm not quite convinced that that everybody's going to start saying, "Now wait a minute, I know there's total peace on earth, and every weapon is, we've begun the 7-year task of getting rid of all weapons on earth, but show me your genealogy."
Right, and of course, like you said, that wouldn't be up to the common man to ask that anyway.
Exactly. So
okay, let's move into Revelation.
Soon and speedily in our day, but that's not the point.
Okay, let's move into Revelation. I believe that there is a hint in Revelation. In Judaism, the tradition is that the maximum time, that anyone will spend in, Hades, whatever, like fire, whatever you want to call it, is going to be 11 months. The maximum time, unless, of course, it's
11
like
months in one day, so that it's into the 12th month.
Okay, now I believe that there is a hint to that in the book of Revelation.
Which would be what?
Which would be, I'm going off memory. I'm thinking it's 3:18, maybe something like that. Let me look it up. I'll find it for you. But it says, it talks about outside the gates of heaven. It says outside the gates will be the fornicators, idolaters. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't say in hell will be the fornicators and idolaters. It says outside the gates of heaven, or outside the gates will be these things. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't it be, if it really is like an eternal hell? When I was a Christian, I actually read that like, okay, so if a person rejects God's laws and they, an idolater or whatever you want to call it, lives a life of idolatry or adultery, whatever the case may be, and then the time comes and they go through a period of purity, cleaning, whatever, but they're still not allowed inside the house. They're only allowed to share the front porch, so to speak, or out in the front yard. And so that's kind of how I perceive that. Does not mean that's what it says, but I will just say there was enough written there to be confusing. What is your take on? Did you find it already by chance?
No, I'm trying to find it from your.
Let me look.
I tried to do while you were talking a search for the word gate.
I'll find it for you.
And I'm not coming down with anything except Revelations 21:21.
First of all, actually look that up and see. I'm going to go here to Revelation just for grins. I thought it was in 3:17 or something like that. Let me see, 3:13 maybe. No, not 3:18. Let's see. Nope. Okay, well, anyway, I will find it for you for sure, because it's definitely there, and I was very, very confused, not upset, but just again in my Christian searching, as this was to me actually made me feel a little bit better about things. Made me feel like, okay, maybe Jesus isn't so hardcore like people say that he's not anyway. And I will search it up right now using this. And if any of the viewers out there know which verse I'm talking about, put it up on YouTube and I will read it off. Meanwhile, I'm going to do a quick search. See.
Let me tell you. Let me know what you find in your search, because my search didn't come up with anything for the word gate.
There it is, right there. Well, I'll say there it is. There's a search for it there. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is Revelation 22. Maybe. Let's see. What do we got? It says 22:15. Let me look that up and see if that's actually where it is. Bear with me here. Let's see, King James. I'll go back here. Okay, Revelation 22:15. Okay, yep, that's it right there. You were right. You found it the first time. It says,
no,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it says 22:14. Blessed are they that do His commandments. That's another thing too. It's talking about people. I mean, Revelation says, "Blessed are they who do His commandments." I mean, that's the New Testament stuff right there.
That they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city.
Okay, now
for without are dogs and sorcerers.
For outside are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers.
Loves and makes a lie.
Right. It doesn't say in hell. This would have been a great place to put that, by the way. In the eternal lake of fire, this is for all the dogs and sorcerers, whoremongers, murderers, idolaters, whosoever loves and makes a lie, right? But it doesn't say that. So anyway, make a long story short, there's questions there. But also, my main question while I was bringing up Revelation, as that thing jumped into my brain, was actually talking about a lot of people are comparing Revelation with Daniel, with the prophecies in Daniel. Do you think that's where?
There are some scholars who think that Revelation was like a plagiarism of.
Oh, right.
Of Ezekiel.
Oh, is that
Daniel,
what I'm thinking of? Okay.
And Ezekiel, Daniel, and I can't remember the third one. But there's the third. There was a plagiarism of 3 books of the Tanakh. Ezekiel, Daniel, and there's a third one. I can't remember which one it is. But it was the plagiarism of it.
Okay, got it. So, in summary, cover to cover, there really isn't anything that would support Jesus as the Messiah, unless you want to close the Tanakh and ignore it. If you're going to base your belief on Jesus based on the New Testament writings, I can't help you. Rabbi Singer said it the best way I've ever heard it. He said, if you're going to tell me that the J-Man is the Messiah, just because a tree in your backyard told you, he goes, I can't help you. However, trying to tell me that the J-Man is the Messiah, you need to sit down and we need to have a talk. Because but they can't.
Like this Messianic guy in Georgia or Louisiana or wherever it was.
Right. Unbelievable.
And I knew what I overdid it when I responded to his email, and I thought I may have done that, but when I fired off a very lengthy response to his email, I thought that he was going to, shall I say, take the bait. Mm-hmm. And when I said, how can you even trust what the New Testament says because of all the contradictions, I thought he was going to say, what contradictions? There are no contradictions. Right. Which he didn't do.
Right.
Darn.
Yeah, that's one thing I find a lot is that most of the people that I talk to, and for people who deal with other people on social media, and they're doing it genuinely, they're trying to reach out to their Christian, family members or friends or past relationship people. Watch for signs. If they're not willing to listen, you'll know by what they're typing back. You'll know by how they respond to something earlier you said. If they're ignoring what you said to start with, they're probably ignoring everything that you're saying, or at least a majority of it, and just trying to give you a load of their own information. So if you notice
there's a concept, and William, you're going to have to help me with where this is, but there's a concept in Christianity, I believe, for the New Testament, maybe not, but at any rate, you'll help me. And that is the mustard seed of faith.
Yeah, that's Revelation 2, I think. Faith of the mustard seed.
And they think that they're planting that seed.
Yeah, right.
So they're not going to listen to anything. They just want to do the talking because they want to plant that seed so that, later, what I have come to believe wholeheartedly, because I've experienced it, is there's also such a thing as planting the mustard seed of doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
By asking questions, and like this guy came back with, well, we'll never agree, so we shouldn't discuss this anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, and the thing is, if the person is not open-minded, and that goes for me too, and I will confess to you every single show if I have to, I am more than willing, and I will give you my phone number. You can call me if you have something new to share me that I have not heard before.
Boy, you're not kidding. I can't stand.
I would love to hear something new.
One of the reasons why it's tedious to me.
Mm-hmm, it is.
When I get these kinds of things from people,
Well, they literally call you and they tell you something like they don't think you've ever heard it before. But
yeah, because they're going to have something new that nobody's ever heard before, and they're going to be the ones to be able to convince you that Christianity is right.
Right. And so people ask me all the time, am I open-minded? William, you're closed-minded. Well, if I was closed-minded, why am I the only one who investigated from both sides of the field? You've only investigated from the Christian side, but you say that I'm closed-minded.
Right, exactly. And they're also going to,
it doesn't make sense.
We're closed-minded because we won't accept what they want to tell us. Because what they want to tell us is brand new.
Oh, and you know what I love? I'm saying definitely not for real. But one thing that really I hear a lot is, oh, you believe the lies of the rabbis. You let them deceive you. And I'm thinking, I actually went to the rabbis after I found out the truth, not before. I didn't go to them and they tricked me into thinking their way. I actually got on this journey and found Judaism before I ever even ran into Rabbi Singer, or before I even ran into you or anybody else that matters.
William, you're in league with the devil.
May I remain forever. Okay, so, and just as a final thought, if Jesus came back, sorry, if Jesus came here and came to me and he showed me these holes in his hands and his side right now, if you walk through that door right now, I would say, you know what? You were an awesome Egyptian pagan god, and I'm glad what happened to you, because if you claim to be the lamb referring to Egypt,
the
then
epitomal pagan god of the Egyptians.
And there's no way, and I do not say this, I'm saying this very literally and very respectfully, there's no way in heaven or hell that I would ever bow my knee to Jesus under any circumstances, no matter what. Not still now. Before, I was like, Rabbi, there's no way I would have ever said something like this. I couldn't even imagine myself saying something like this before. When I was a Christian, I was like, there's no way I would ever lose my faith in Jesus. But
let me ask you a question, because this has been a critique of mine of Christian churches.
Okay.
I think it would be fair to say it's a critique of the Messianic quote-unquote synagogues as well.
Sure. And
that is, every service I've seen on TV or whatever, they never talk about God.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even talk about the Father except in relationship to the Son.
Right,
they only talk about Jesus. Jesus this, Jesus that, Jesus this. It's all about Jesus.
Yeah. Even the Messianic synagogues, all of their prayers are modified to include the name of Yashke in their prayers.
Yes, right. But just on first look, doesn't that seem a little weird?
Oh yeah, of course. And it was very weird.
The Ten Commandments: you will have no other gods before me. Even if you think they're gods, you still don't have those false gods when you think are gods before me.
Right.
So you may think they're gods, but even if you think they're gods, you don't have those false gods before me.
Right.
And anyway.
Got it. Okay, Rabbi, we got 2 minutes. Tell us about your website. Tell us about your applications for your phone again. I'd like to get that out there at least once a show, because it's really fast. Like I said, I have the app on my phone.
Well,
where's my phone?
I have a website. It's called whatjewsbelieve.org. It has a Spanish translation to an earlier version, really one of the earliest versions of the texts that are found there now, and that is creenciajudia.org, CREENCIAJUDIA. Creenciajudia.org is a Spanish translation. I have a iPhone and an Android app. Both are called Jewish Mission Control.
I'm looking for it right now on mine.
Okay. And I have a book called Judaism and Christianity, A Contrast.
I'm going to do something real fast. I'm going to switch screens because it's an actual app. I can't pull the app up on my computer, but what I can do is I can show you, just for grins. Is that over there real quick? Oh my God, that chroma key is terrible. Okay, so let's see if you can see without all the lights, if I can get it squared to the screen. You can see how this application, you can literally click.
If you go to the iTunes.
Okay, Jesus Not Messiah.
There it is.
Okay, and so you can click on it, and it just goes to tons of information. I wished I could actually see the screen, but I can't see it from this far away from the actual main monitor up there. But there's so many different loops and different hyperlinks everywhere. It's really fascinating.
It's not an app to access the internet.
Right.
Everything's within the encapsulated in the app.
Right. Wow, I'm wearing a blue shirt. It looks green on there. I have never adjusted this light. That's okay. There he is. Okay, good deal. Salud. Bless you, brother. And Well, I guess that's. Tell you what, keep talking. I got to pull up. Joe's music. Joe, you got to help us get this YouTube thing conquered, man. That'd be awesome.
Yes.
So
I'm going to have to tell him about that immediately.
yeah, and it's something. I think it's automatic. that they do. I don't think it's something that they.
Well, yeah, but
they
how do we
search
prove
for.
to them that we've been given permission directly from Joe to use it on the show?
Right. Well, the last few times that actually I addressed it, I had to go and send YouTube an email. It said click here if you feel like this claim has been made in error, and then you have to go through all these different steps to tell us why and who did you get your permission for. And I'm like, are you serious? So I'm thinking maybe that's something that he needs to address with him on that to see if that will actually resolve. So okay,
right.
so we've got
No.
what do you want here, Big Daddy? Shalom Aleichem, Unbroken, Hineni, Modiani.
Well, my personal favorite is Unbroken, but
that's the good one. Let's do
This
that.
is
Shalom
for
Aleichem
you.
is good too. Either one.
This is for
I love it. I like it. My favorite one actually on here is the Shalom Aleichem. But
and it's beautiful.
this is also
and
good.
bright.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. It's good to see you all again this week. Sorry we've been missing you a lot. The work schedule has been really
There's a
crazy,
home.
and a lot of other things. My
You
work
are
truck just
safe.
broke down and stuff, so
And it was love.
caused me to be late again today, so I do apologize. We will get things back on time soon. So just keep tuning in. Keep if you're watching tuning in to the website tonightalk.com. All you got to do is tune in when the show's supposed to start and just leave the screen up. Once we start, it'll automatically start playing. And if it turns out we're not playing or it doesn't come through, probably because we actually have canceled. So anyway, so good to see everyone again. Rabbi, thank you again for your
Always
for
my
your time.
pleasure. I enjoy talking with
Glad you're doing well. Shalom, shalom, everybody. We'll see you next week. Shalom.
From someone else's mistake. 'Cause you are told that unless you say yes, you will pay for an ancient, an old failed test. And no matter how good your life, it will never add up in God's eyes. And your seeking leads to questions, and your questions lead to truth. And those lies dissolve. It's just God and you. And you realize you are whole, and you know there's no sin on your soul from ages ago. You're unchained, you're unbroken, you're unbound. So lift your head up high, you can smile and show God your face, even if it's been a while. Oh, and raise your glass and stand tall, 'cause you were made of love after all. You can choose to be chosen, you can stand up right off your knees, and the reward for doing good is the good in the world that you see. So I walked away from all that fear. I chose a brand new path. It was waiting for years, and there was plenty of room under that tree for the whole wide world, even you and me. You're unchained, you're unbroken, you're unbound. You're unchained, you're unbroken, you're unbound. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. And your God will be my God. Where you fall, I will lay. There's no veil on our eyes, just truth. One God for me and you. we are loved by unending love. Ahavat Olam.